Okay, cool. Hi everyone, my name is Josip. Today we're going to talk about data localization for application services with Cloudflare. Um, to my person and to quickly introduce myself, my name is Josip. I'm a solutions engineer at Cloudflare. Um, just wanted to ask who knew about Cloudflare before the outage and the Cloudflare existed. I hope a few people, okay. So that's good. So it's not just that we are known for that, of course. But yeah, really happy to be here today to talk about the options that we have with Cloudflare and addressing some of the concerns that exist around data localization and data locality. So the first part I'd like to talk about is the application services, a bit of a primer, which kind of has to be explained a bit for data localization to make sense. As part of the application services, what we should look at is, of course, how the Cloudflare Connectivity Cloud works. So there's a lot of ways how a Cloudflare as a service could be described, but probably the Connectivity Cloud is really the best way to think about it. I mean, the numbers are clear, not necessarily going to go over them, but I think the important point to know is that with Cloudflare, that we have a Anycast network. And of course, with an Anycast network, what we can achieve, for example, you as a customer will always receive the same set of IP addresses once you proxy your traffic on layer 7 through Cloudflare, right? And what that means is that that the traffic gets ingested closest to the users, and that has a lot of good implications for performance and for security as well, of course. With this huge network, what we can do, of course, is to mitigate DDoS attacks and provide security functions at the edge. I think this is really a key point also to understand the follow-up steps that come with it. This slide shows a bit how the traffic sequence looks like, generally speaking, with Cloudflare. Of course, the access and the traffic from the end users is ingested closest to them. So that means that with every request, what we can do is we can inspect traffic closest to the edge. From the architectural point of view is that every city, every POP that we run, runs every service that Cloudflare offers. So of course that means that very important point is, for example, for the DDoS protection, that we don't, backhaul traffic to a central location, but we really have the edge locations that handle all the heavy processing, right? So that leads to good user experiences and, of course, increases security for our customers. Going through from left, right is, of course, the DNS. So that means if you have full setup on Cloudflare with DNS, you have the part Cloudflare answering your DNS queries as a managed service. This product here, obviously data localization, is the key of this talk today, where we can comply with local data processing laws as well, because that's one of the topics that we talk about, at least in Switzerland, with a lot of customers, but also globally. With a lot of customers is that, okay, how is my data handled? Where are my TLS keys, right? And all of these kind of things are really important to customers, and that's going to be the focus of the talk today. Just to say here, between the data localization product and the DDoS protection, where we actually inspect the traffic at the edge, is exactly where the TLS decryption and offloading happens, right? And this part is crucial to understand, of course, that let's say in the standard setup without Data Localization Suite is that a copy of the TLS keys that hold your server-side certificate is present on every Cloudflare POP, right? So that means that in order for Cloudflare to be able to inspect the traffic at the edge, of course, we have to hold the TLS keys in the default setup. And of course, with Data Localization Suite, we offer different ways of how that can be altered, let's say that that general behavior. Of course, this part then blocks threats to your web apps, APIs, etc. yeah, probably not going to go over each individual product, but just saying that this is really the security part of the application services portfolio. We have, of course, the CDN part, which improves the application performance. We have the capacity scaling, load balancing here. The Argo Smart routing here, which is really a product that is optimizing the paths within the Cloudflare backbone. And in here, we have your origin and your application that you most likely will be running on Kubernetes, right? Yeah, so I just think it makes still sense to go over a couple of them in more detail. When you onboard or have Cloudflare as your layer 7 reverse proxy, of course, that means that Cloudflare is actually actively reverse proxying your traffic. And let's say the layers below are not really things that you need to care about as a customer. So that's really one of the main advantages here as well. And just to show that, yeah, we offer protection, DDoS protection throughout. And a bit this difference will be shown a bit in the Data Localization Suite, how this behavior changes as you adopt potentially the product. Just to say, I often talk with customers in Switzerland that tell me, hey, why do I have to care about the global network? Why do I have to care about people in different countries, traffic from different countries? Is exactly because of this threat intel that we released in the previous quarter, right? Because if you have an endpoint in the internet, you can't really choose, well, who will access your endpoints, right? And this is one of the important topics, of course, is that what we are seeing is that from, let's say, Southeast Asia is increasing with attacks, and yeah, even like smaller companies in Switzerland can be targeted. This is not meant to, let's say, scare anybody, but just to show why, even though if you're a smaller company and you think, yeah, all of your end users are based out of Switzerland, it's of course still important to have DDoS protection at that scale, because these numbers are always increasing. Just a quick note on the Cloudflare WAF. With the Cloudflare WAF, we implement a layered approach to custom rule sets and Cloudflare managed rule sets, and these obviously give a lot of benefits to our customers and to the operation teams that are then, yeah, let's say when there are attacks ongoing or when there are things that need to be managed is a lot less than with other solutions, right? And of course, there's quite a lot of lists, quite a long list. We have the DDoS protection, we have a machine learning part that is in there. We have the Cloudflare managed rule set, as well as the custom rule set that you can implement, and a lot of things as well regarding exposed credential checks, etc. And in the end here again, your origins that pass through this list of rules. Okay, let's talk a bit about how the default use case or the default data flow looks like, and why some customers ask Cloudflare, hey, whether we can change anything on this default behavior. So generally speaking, how an end user ingests or goes to Cloudflare is that the end user connects to the closest data center from Cloudflare, right? So you have the last mile from the ISP, which then ingests to the Cloudflare POP. In here, this data center from Cloudflare, it will look at the traffic, it will inspect the traffic, decrypt it, do the traffic sequence that I showed earlier, and then it's forwarded to your origins, right? So that's the part that is visible. Then, of course, the metadata about this kind of connection, about this traffic, is sent to the core data centers that Cloudflare operates out of the US and out of Europe. And in here, then the question is a bit, okay, why do companies even care, or enterprise customers, businesses care about data localization? Of course, one point is compliance with data localization laws, data privacy and protection, competitive advantage. Of course, companies have a differentiation between what kind of other customers they work with and partners that they work with, customer trust, reputational concerns, intellectual property protection, and as well, which is probably the most important thing, is that they need actual technical measures in addition to stuff that is written in the contract, right? And this is exactly where the Data Localization Suite comes in, right? So there are, let's say, three slices or 3 parts that are relevant here. On the left side, it's really, hey, where are the TLS keys stored that Cloudflare uses? The part in the middle is where does the decryption actually happen of the session, and where is the aforementioned metadata actually stored. And then if we look at this part here, is that, yes, we have the 3 products that exactly address these concerns. With the Geo Key Manager, you really have to control where the TLS encryption and decryption happens, right? On the regional services side, in the middle, you can control where that traffic, in which regions of the world that traffic is decrypted and inspected. And with the Customer Metadata Boundary, you have control over how the metadata is handled and where it's stored. And now we're going to dive a bit deeper into each of these products. Yes, so with Geo Key Manager, in this scenario here, is that the setup looks like the following. You have the Geo Key Manager with your custom certificates, so not necessarily certificates that Cloudflare manages and issues themselves, but that you upload yourself, are present and configured to only be present in the US, for example, right? And in here, what happens is that the initial request that comes from an end user in Europe goes first to retrieve the key. And after it had retrieved the initial request, is that you have this decryption only done locally based on the session resumption and TLS keys, right? So this is to speed up the communication so that you don't have to call out each time to the central place where the key is stored. Important to note, of course, here that actually the TLS key itself here is never present on this location. So with this, you can really choose where the encryption happens and where it's stored within the data center's region that you specify. And there's one more version of Geo Key Manager, which is also giving you a bit more capabilities and levers to configure this. Then there's a feature that is not so often talked about in Cloudflare, which is called Keyless. And Keyless enables you to bring your own key. In this scenario, what actually happens is that on this side, on the key server side where your origin lives, what can be configured is the Go Keyless server part from Cloudflare. So it's an open source binary that is hosted and built on GitHub. What you can do here as well is hook it up to an HSM. And then generally speaking, how the flow looks like that we did before is that, okay, this negotiation, this part should be pretty clear and is standard for RSA keys. But here what actually happens is that Cloudflare never really looks at the key server or the key material that is hosted either on your HSM or on the Go Keyless server, but only that the signature is returned and Cloudflare uses the signature and the session ticket and session key in the future for future visits. So that means in a sense that you don't always have to go back for each request to the keys and to the origin server. Regional services is then the part in the middle where the decryption happens, where you can say, okay, actually, I want the region where decryption can happen only to be in Europe. right? So you have your eyeball or your end user that is located in the US, that is ingested closest to the data center closest to him, which will also be US based. On this part, on 2, you can see that it's only applying layer 3 DDoS mitigation techniques. If you look at, or if you think about the traffic sequence in the beginning, what this means that is before or when data localization happens, is that this POP is aware, okay, actually I can't look into that packet, I can't decrypt here, I forward it to the actual region that is configured for the customer. And in this case, it will be Europe, can of course be Switzerland as well. And once that happens, the decryption actually happens at the right place. Once the traffic is cleaned, or also not detected as an attack, it will be forwarded to the origin server. And this just shows how that looks like in the dashboard. Once that feature is activated, not sure if you are aware with the dashboard or how that looks like, but this is basically the DNS section of the dashboard. And when you edit a DNS record, you can then select which kind of region you want for that host name. And in here, there will be a Switzerland selection as well. This is really what regional services does. And then we have the customer metadata boundary. So for the customer metadata boundary, this is the place where we are talking about the logs, where they are stored. So today there are 2 options to manage this. Of course, because our control plane part is available either in the US or in Europe, what the customers can define is whether they want to have it stored in the US or in Europe. And basically, the sequence of events is the same, just where are we storing the metadata about the traffic. And just to show here, this is how it looks like in the dashboard. Within the part of the configuration is that where you can define whether your region for the customer metadata should be the European Union or the United States. One of the, of course, important parts, and where Cloudflare also has a good track record, is in regards to privacy. So Cloudflare really invests a lot of time for also privacy protecting protocols, also really pride on that to make the internet a better place. We of course have one of the, I think, earliest universal TLS for free services in the past. We have the Quad 1 public DNS resolver, and really what I can say is that also internally, whenever Cloudflare builds out new products or looks at enhancing solutions, is that it's always built with the privacy of the customers and its users in mind. Some closing remarks from my end is that in summary, really the privacy stance is that, yeah, we want to really build a better internet. We don't want, we are not making money with data from our customers, of course, or from free users. So the privacy and the transparency is really important from Cloudflare. Of course, there are all the compliance and legal frameworks that Cloudflare adheres to, also in Switzerland. But of course, yeah, especially the DPAs, addendums that are added, and the standard contractual clauses. But really, the Data Localization Suite is if you want to actually technically make sure that this also happens, of course. Yes, that's the part with the technical data localization that we talked about. Just to show here, it's a small excerpt from the dev docs from Cloudflare. Just thought it makes sense to have like a small selection that would be relevant for customers in Switzerland. Regional services is officially supported as a region for Switzerland. As shown previously, the customer metadata boundary is currently not. So here the same applies also, that you can use the EO metadata boundary for Switzerland. And for the Geo Key Manager, that's currently not supported in Switzerland as a region, but of course there we have the Keyless SSL possibility as a fallback. And there will be more things to come in the future. That's basically it from my side. Thank you very much for your attention. And of course, if there are questions.
Questions, yeah.
First of all, thank you. You more or less already answered it in the last slide, but the boundary system seems to be pretty interesting for some of our customers as well. Will it be possible at some point to also maybe have a customized subset of boundaries which you can define?
Yes, yes. That's definitely where this is heading in the future roadmap. And that's something the team is working on and is aware of. Yes, that's like a feature that's often requested. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
More questions?
Thank you very much. I wanted to ask you about the keyless. Can you explain this maybe again? What do I need? You said something about the binary I need to install. How does this work exactly?
Sure. So in this part here is that what you basically need is kind of like a reverse proxy on your end that makes this kind of interaction possible, right? So there is Go Keyless, which is something developed by Cloudflare that enables you to either have the private or the private public key pair on the keyless server itself, or you can have it in an HSM, and basically you can integrate it to a PKCS11 interface, like you would with any other interaction with the HSM. And this part here is then really where you make sure that the private key that you have on your key server never leaves your security boundary. Right, so in that instance, it's not the case that Cloudflare can see your private key or private key material. Right, so it's really working based on session keys.
Okay.
I hope that answers it.
Read it up myself.
Cyril?
Just a follow-up. In this case, Cloudflare can still decrypt the traffic, though, or using those session keys, right?
Absolutely.
Okay,
yes.
okay.
So the idea here is really that you keep custody of your private key material, right? But Cloudflare really has to look at the traffic to apply
the rules
layer 7 DDoS protection and the WAF, exactly.
Okay.
More questions? Not, so then we're at the end. So as a conclusion, I think we can hope that DG Pizza that we are waiting for is not using Kubernetes and also not Cloudflare, at least not the Monday before.
When it breaks. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.